Well, welcome guys, thanks for checking out this video. So you're here to find out what are the latest games that have been ported over from the Atomiswave arcade board over to the Sega Dreamcast. Now the Sega Dreamcast still actually amazes me because we're still actually getting new content to this console that had not been in production for almost 20 years now. So I'm pretty excited as a Dreamcast fan and show you now what actually Atomiswaves that we have got at the timing of this video. Now I've actually done some videos in the past regarding these release. I kind of did it one by one, but because I've got a fair catching up to do, because I haven't done these videos for quite a while, about 2 months, is a fair list of games I want to just quickly cover in this video. So I'll try and keep this video as short as possible for you. So first things first, I just have to quickly mention is just thank you guys for supporting this channel. I finally managed to hit about 1,500 subscribers and I think that's pretty awesome for a newbie YouTuber like myself. Hopefully I am supporting the retro gaming community. Now for you guys that are new to this Atomiswave games to the Dreamcast, basically in about early 2000 the Atomiswave arcade system was made by a company called Sammy. Now this actually development game company was been making games before this, but they actually merged with Sega themselves to create a sub company called Sega Sammy. Now they've been developing these arcade boards that was resembled just like the Sega Dreamcast itself, and finally 20 years later a guy managed to pick up a development kit, and if you see the picture it looks just like a Sega Dreamcast development kit, and they finally got codes of how they actually ported the Atomiswave games from there to the arcade board, and then with that code system they managed to actually apply that to the Sega Dreamcast because the actual board itself is just the same. So thankfully now there's a guy called Megafaults and another person, I just popped that up there, can't remember the name. They've put a lot of work into trying to get these games over. So now we're going to head over to some actual game captured and some of these games that have been ported over and the timing of this video. So here we are kicking off with
Fist.
I found most of these titles from Atomiswave do like to say their own name of their game. I'm really excited about this title because the beat-em up genre is one of my favourite genres, and playing these on the Dreamcast is pretty sweet. I do totally recommend using the arcade stick. So a bit more info about this title. It was first released straight to arcades in 2003 by Sammy and a game company called Dips. I never actually managed to play this out in the wild, and that goes through a lot of these games from the Atomiswave. I never was lucky enough to play these on the original arcades. So playing all these games right now is the first time of me actually experienced these titles as well. You can select between 4 different type of characters. First, probably the main character is Leonid, and you got Vanessa, Enzo and the Undead. I kind of like his little subtitle name, The Mighty Dude, so I'm going to stick with this and show you what the actual gameplay is like with this main guy. I did correctly realise that this title is pretty fun, it's pretty solid experience, and of course I have a bit of a weak spot to beat-em ups, so there's a lot of weapons you can actually choose from with this title, and of course I do recommend getting a buddy to get the 2-player co-op on this. It is pretty fun. So there's a lot of stuff to go to, and you also unlock this like limit break mode. Basically it just lets you trigger it by pressing the 3 buttons down, and then you just bash A as hard as you can. And the level system is pretty simple. It has well structured levels as well, plenty of interactivity with the backgrounds and the enemies, and that limit break is pretty fun. Kind of reminds me of the Streets of Rage 4 that we probably would have got on the Dreamcast, but obviously it's not as good as that Zombies Revenge that we officially had. As it comes to the graphics, as you can see, they're not too bad. It doesn't actually put that much of a strain on the system, but this game actually runs pretty buttery smooth. For the sound as well and the music, they're not completely garbage, but I gotta say they are pretty nice. The sound effects are pretty fun, and some of the character designs really interesting as you see later on, but I wouldn't want to spoil things further with that. With the actual original arcade system, I believe there were 2 builds I just managed to find on the internet, but personally I've never actually seen these around. It's a bit of a shame because I would have really enjoyed this arcade, but I would jump on this straight away. So I can safely say that I would actually put this in one of my favourites of beat-em ups. It's a pretty solid and fluid experience with a lot of interactive weapons and a lot of creativity, and it doesn't take itself too serious, and I totally recommend jumping on this with a buddy. Next up we're going to have a double whammy of 2 entries from the Guilty Gear series. Now personally, I've never really got into the Guilty Gear series. I know, shame on me. I'm a big fan of the Street Fighter. Not really good at these fighting games, but I do really enjoy them. And if you're a fan of Street Fighter with weapons, with some awesome music, then you're going to love this. So the actual original Guilty Gear X was released for the Sega Dreamcast, and now this is the 1.5 version. That is an update that was later released in 2003. This version, being the arcade version from the Atomiswave, comes with 2 actual modes, duel and survival. It also comes with 16 players to choose from. Though there are no changes at all with the main storyline, the main changes were in the field of character balance and the moves, and making it more similar to the more recently released Guilty Gear XX. Now personally I haven't put that much time in the Guilty Gear series itself, but I can see now the character design is pretty stunning, the animation is pretty awesome, and the background art is pretty sweet, but my favourite is the music itself. It's really interesting now that we do have more of a refined version to the Sega Dreamcast now, to that of what we originally had. It was a well received title, and the series itself is still going on pretty strong, and now I can definitely put more time into the series. Now to explain to you how I've actually managed to get all these games working on my Dreamcast, basically I've been downloading the GDI files and then just using the GDEMU menu to add these onto my SD card and then popping that into my GDEMU board, which is really simple to install. And if you guys haven't got one or been thinking about one, I do highly recommend getting one, because any new games that are coming out, or even translation games, you can just easily put on an SD card. But if you guys haven't got one, there is another option of actually getting them on discs, but I'll explain about that, how to do that yourself, later on in the video. Now we move on to our next Guilty Gear Atomiswave port, which is Guilty Gear Azuka. Now this was actually originally released back in 2003, and this did actually get a console port release, so you may have actually seen this floating about. Now this version doesn't actually live up to the console version, so the PlayStation 2 and Xbox and Windows actually bought some extra features, including scrolling adventure, a customization mode, and 2 new playable characters. This is really unique and something I would actually try and get a couple of guys to actually try out myself, and this has a 4-player mode, so there's plenty of characters to choose from, even more so than Guilty Gear 1.5. And the music again is pretty awesome, and you're not let down with the animation and character balance and the whole fighting mechanics itself. It's a really interesting way to do it. The one thing I kind of struggled with is actually a button which you press on the Dreamcast, which is why, to change the rotation of the character. So normally if you're fighting on the left hand side, your guy faces on the right, but if you jump over the character you have to press Y to then move it. So this actually got me really confused at the time, but you can see the actual life bars at the top. That's where you can actually swap your characters and tag your team in. So it's 1 player at a time, but you can have up to 4 players to all linked up to your Dreamcast, so I think that's pretty awesome with this release. This title again was developed by Arc System Works and then published by Sammy Studios, which also had a 2003 release. As this game introduces a 4-player option for the first time in the series, it gives player 4 characters that you can choose 2-on-2, 3-on-1, or everyone for themselves. Now back in the day it did have some mixed reviews. It was praised mostly because of its animation and its soundtrack, which is personally one of my favourite things about this series. It was just basically let down because of the lack of story mode, but it's very interesting, especially with the multiplayer side with 4 players. There's not many fighting beat 'em up games out there that have this element of gameplay.
Axel, win!
Next one up is probably my favourite in the list just because of its comical value. Dirty Pigskin Football. Now, if you actually managed to play the NFL Blitz games in the past, you just kind of got the same recipe. There's some very unique, funny characters with this game. So you can have up to 4 players. So you can have 2 aside as well, which is pretty sweet. So getting a couple of guys on this game is pretty fun. So the characters you can choose from are things like the Men in Black, zombies, some werewolves, some prisoners, and some aliens. and also the main man Hulk Hogan. So I'm going to choose my team. I'm going to go with the Hulk guys. Why not? Ring Kings. So I can really see this game like in a bar or like in a sports club type of thing, where people just have a couple of drinks and they'll chuck in a couple of quid just to have some comical value out of this game. So as you can see, the graphics are not too bad. They're not really pushing much of the Dreamcast, but the fact that it's just a bit of a simple, fun game is pretty awesome to add to our collection. Now out there in the wild, there were two versions of cabinets. There was a 2-player version or a 4-player version. So if you're lucky enough to find one of them, you would have had pretty much fun time with that. Now each game actually has 3 minutes actually long of play, pretty short and simple. There's no kicking of any kind in the game, and each team starts with possession of their own 20 yards and has 4 downs to score a touchdown, much like American football. Rules are its own, or the ball is turned over at the downs. There are no penalties of any kind. Here's some quick tips. Button 1 and 2 will spin your runner. 2 and 3 button delivers a stiff arm as well as the quarterbacks. If your meter reads super, you can throw an incredibly quick pass, and also you would sprint your player with button 3. Now the sound effects in the game are pretty hilarious, really bone crunching. The music is quite unique, it doesn't really stand out, and the actual design on the stadiums are actually built from each team, and they're quite hilarious. Now one problem with these Atomiswave ports is the ability to save, so you can't really save your high scores on any of these games, but I can safely say all these games that I've been testing out, and also later on you will see, they actually been running all the way through with no problem. I managed to play throughout most of these games, so I can definitely confirm that. Now this title won't actually take up too much of your time. You're just playing about 4 different teams and they're about 3 minutes long, so this is just a bit of fun. I do recommend just getting a 4-player mode with a couple of your friends. So as I did state earlier, I just want to try and keep this video short for you guys, so this is just an interjection to these titles.
Good night, Irene.
So guys, this video is actually turning out to be a lot longer than originally planned, so I'm going to split this up into 2 videos, if that's okay with you. I'll put the second part of my video in the description box below, and also pop up there for you. If you just click that, you will then see part 2 of these Atomiswave ports, and in that video I'll also go into a bit more detail of these kind of mods that the community is behind, and also some debug updates to these games. So as always guys, thanks for watching, and if you want to like this video, hit that button. If you're new and want to support this channel, click subscribe, leave your comments below, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.